Hamish and Dave's Kentucky Adventure. I'm Hamish Cargill.
I'm Dave Cameron.
And today we are two of the luckiest blokes in Australia. If you've ever wondered how horses fly around the world, they're courtesy of International Racehorse Transport. Today we are taking you right behind the scenes to answer all of your questions.
That's right, Hambo. We've got an exclusive. We're going to show you all the Australian-based World Equestrian Games horses being loaded onto the planes for their long journey to Kentucky.
Mate, I've been excited about this for a long time.
Hambo, so am I, mate. It's not every day you get to see horses fly.
Before we can get to that, let's go back to where it all began.
Well, Hambo, you can't ride your WEG horse to the airport, so IRT provide a limousine service instead.
Isn't that just Stuart's truck?
How about we don't get caught up on the details? As I was saying, the horses are driven into the livestock handling area at Sydney Airport, where all the preparations occur for them to eventually be loaded onto the plane.
Obviously, with 10 team horses flying, there was a mountain of gear to move around, and no shortage of work to be done.
Except, we managed to avoid doing any of it. In the livestock handling area, the IRT guys are in their element, and it's their domain, and they run it like clockwork.
Davo, half the excitement of flying a horse around the world is the free halter with inscribed nameplate that IRT provide for your horse.
Mate, I'd fly a horse just to get one. Okay guys, here we are in the actual horse stall. These are the stalls the horses will be travelling in for 22 hours to Los Angeles. I'm horse 1, this is where horse 1 will stand.
And I'm horse 2. Today, Davo, you're going to have to move your big butt over there, mate. Normally these are 3 horse stalls, courtesy of the generosity of Equestrian Australia. Given these are World Equestrian Games horses, they're getting a day and a half for their long flight over to the US. Which should make them all a lot more comfortable on arrival, I would think. It was still hard to get past the enclosed nature of the stall, and especially the low roof. But for Dave, one other factor really stood out.
To me, the big thing that points out, no windows. For a horse, I think being claustrophobic, it's going to be a bit of a problem. I think horses wouldn't like being in this enclosed space for a long period of time.
No, well, it will be interesting to see when we start to load the horses about how happy they are just to wander on. Perhaps I had tempted fate with this comment, as when I finally dragged and mesmerised Dave Cameron out of the stall, we found that not all of the horses were as taken by the look of it as he was.
It was nothing the experienced horsemen at IRT hadn't seen before, and they weren't short of a solution. First, the old broom and rake trick. Followed by the swapperoo, Ringrel Jaguar showing a surprisingly stubborn Vittori how laid back things are in the West.
Back in the stall, we decided the big grey just wanted some reassurance about the structure he was about to enter.
The walls are basically just fiberglass with plywood inside, just like you'd get in a lot of normal horse trucks. And that's what it is. So for 22 hours, this is where they stand. They've got a nice sawdust base. As you said before, Hambo, it is waterproof, but nothing special. This is where they are.
It might have been a small space, but Dave was still making discoveries.
What I find very interesting that even airline flying horses have not come up with a better system to tie horses up than baling twine. Just goes to show to the general horse public that baling twine still is the recommended tying up system, even for the most elite horse carrying services around the world.
In the end though, our biggest criticism of the stall was the lack of entertainment options.
Like us who will be flying United, the horses don't get a personal TV player either.
No, we're back in 1980. While the horses were being loaded, Dave was doing some interesting research with eventing team member Chris Burton.
What are you doing here, mate? You're wetting the hay.
Yeah, Dennis was telling us how dry it gets on the plane, the dry air that's recirculated around the cab. And often they'll get, the loosened hay, it gets a bit of dust in their lungs and that sort of thing. So they're feeding grass hay because it's low protein and wetting it down so there's no dust.
Next question, mate. You're disappointed you're not wearing a high-vis vest like Hambo and myself?
I am very envious, guys. They're pretty cool. Do you get to keep them?
We're going to steal it.
While Dave was talking fashion, I was getting the lowdown on what eventing team vet Dennis Goulding would be doing during the flight.
Well, most of our time we're really providing maintenance to the horses, as feed and water, and then we're checking temperatures every couple of hours. We check temperatures, and we're watching that the horses are quite happy in that, and they've been passing dung, and there's no signs of colicky symptoms or anything like that. Yeah. But in general, the horses probably won't drink for the first 6 hours. Coming into Hong Kong, they'll start to pick up on water. We reload with water and get cracking again.
Mark Sheswick is the New South Wales cargo manager for Cathay Pacific, and he became our best friend on the day. I asked him what it's like to put horses on a plane.
Basically, it's like handling a human being.
And what happens if you get a horse that's scared of flying?
The groom will administer maybe a sedative or something like that just to calm the horse down.
Mark did let slip that there'd been a little accident on a plane a few months back.
And of course we had quite a lot of leakage of urine on the aircraft floor. Put an aircraft out for about a week and caused a big sort of clean-up bill as well.
With the horses locked and loaded and happily tucking into their hay that Birdo had drowned, it was time for them to roll on over to their Cathay Pacific 747.
I'm sure this is what it used to be like when the Cameron family headed off to Pony Club.
More than likely.
The 747 is a mighty beast. I guess that in many ways it's the draft horse of the skies.
You could say that. It's a pretty impressive aircraft when you stand face to face with it. And watching the horses get lifted right up into the rear cargo door really did give you an idea of how massively tall this plane is. I don't think they did it to the horses, but before we could get on the plane to have a look around, security wanted to share a moment with us.
And while I was regretting wearing shoes with laces, Davo seemed to be quite enjoying his pat down.
Since we weren't actually going anywhere, I'm not sure who we waved at, but I'm sure that somewhere out there, a baggage handler appreciated our effort.
Inside, I quickly noticed that the horses were flying closer to the pointy end of the plane than I had ever been. And while I was busy getting jealous, Davo had a chat to IRT Operations Manager Julian Caunter about the flight schedule for these horses.
Flight time's about 22 hours. It's basically, we've organised with the airline that this particular aircraft goes right through to the destination in Los Angeles, and they basically have a fuel stop in Hong Kong, which they're there for approximately 2 hours, and then on to Anchorage, and they're at an hour 50 in Anchorage, and then slip down to Los Angeles.
With IRT being the main player in international horse transport, Julian seemed pretty familiar with most of these horses, and I get the feeling he liked his role.
Yeah, it's nice to be like for the travel agent for the horses and for the World Equestrian team.
While the cargo area was interesting, a 747 is a big boy's toy, and Hamish and I were busting to see what was happening upstairs.
I haven't spent much time upstairs in business class, but I knew I'd finally made it to the VIP section when I found myself hanging out with the pilot Greg Kolb. After listing the Melbourne Cup winners he'd flown, I knew our WEG horses were in safe hands.
Might and Power, Saintly, and lots of very expensive horses.
As the big man in charge, Greg let us in on some of the rules of the flight.
Sometimes the grooms are allowed by special dispensation to go down onto the main deck and be with the horses on takeoff.
Up in the cockpit, we had the pleasant surprise as we discovered that our WEG horses would also be in the delicate hands of a female co-pilot. I made sure I took a moment to enjoy the view. Out the window, that is. Okay, Hambo, this is where the grooms will be sitting for their duration of the flight. It's like business class. We've got some spacious seats. It's rather comfortable.
Phenomenal. Like, I would like to be a groom on this flight.
Well, Hambo, we've had a great day at the airport today, mate. I have seen some things I've never thought are possible, and it's really opened my eyes up in horse transport.
With the engines firing and the big plane about to push back, we couldn't believe how lucky we'd been. A huge thank you to IRT. They were fantastic, efficient and always professional. Equestrian Australia really does appreciate the amazing work that they do flying our best horses around the world.
We've also got to send a big thanks to Cathay Pacific, and in particular Mark Cheswick, who looked after us all afternoon. And I tell you what, I can't think of a better way to fly our horses.
With the horses bound for Kentucky, the countdown to the World Equestrian Games is well and truly on. I'm Hamish Cargill.
And I'm Dave Cameron.
See you somewhere out there.